Welcome to Martini Time. It's a beautiful day here in Blackstone, the center of the world, but then you too are the center. So let's see what the frog will bring up from the pond of the unconscious. So, I come here, it's almost like a little practice because less and less I worry about what I'm going to say. So before the talk comes, maybe an hour, half hour before, I feel a little, I don't know what to say, so there's a little tension. And so I'm just kind of, letting it go and kind of like going through it. And that's better. So it's a matter of a practice of trust. So I'm practicing trust that something will happen. I have the intention. That something informative will happen for me and for you. And I work on and I have the wise view. Now, in Buddhism, the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path, and the first two steps in the path are wise view and wise intention, and all the rest falls into place if those two first steps are in place. And wise view is the view of oneness, not separation, of oneness. So that's even oneness with myself. So when I'm afraid that I won't have anything to say, there's a separation in me. I'm afraid that I won't have anything to say, and therefore I, the fearful I, will be embarrassed or foolish or whatever. You see, will be the deer in the headlight. So right there, you see, wise view as a foundation doesn't let you get seized by unwise view, which is I'm divided in myself, you see. So when I'm not divided in myself, I'm not divided with the world, because you are the world and the world is you. So it all begins with you. So if you trust yourself, you'll trust the world. If you don't trust yourself, you won't trust the world. Because what you do to yourself, you do to the world. That's the primary starting point there. It's not what the world does to you. It's what you do to yourself. And what you do to yourself depends upon whether you have wise view or unwise view. And so wise view is that you are one with everything. And if you start from there, everything else kind of like falls in place. Then wise intention wants to push that unity forward. So I come here with wise view and wise intention to push wise view forward, you see, which is the talk. And so I'm kind of like playing with that here. You have to have a little practice. You have to have things to do where maybe you brush your teeth with your opposite hand, or do things that break up the routine, break up the habit mind, go a different day, read a different book, things like that. Those are little household practices. And so this is kind of like one of my practices that I've developed, which is giving this talk without preparation and trusting that something worthwhile will come out. So today, I got an email some time ago. Let me share this with you. A couple of months ago, some medical students at MCV contacted me as a senior and wanted to know if they could come interview me because they are in a geriatrics course, and one of their homework was to go find a senior and talk to him about aging. And so they came and talked to me. We had a great time, and then they came back another time, and then they just emailed me and wanted some more of my views. And they particularly apparently they're following me on Facebook, and they want to know about why the caterpillar doesn't know what the worm is, but the butterfly, the caterpillar or worm, the worm doesn't know what the butterfly is, but the butterfly knows the worm. And so I explained it to them in everyday mind terms, in that when you're on the first floor, you don't know what the second floor is until you go there. But when you do go there, you know what the first floor is like, and you're glad you don't have to live there because the view's better on the second floor. Another way is, if you don't trust yourself, all right, you'll never know what it's like to trust yourself. If you trust yourself, you remember what it's like not to trust yourself. It's kind of like that. Or insight. Before you have an insight, you have no idea what you will be like after you have the insight. After you have the insight, you know what you were like before it, and you feel you're the better for it, you see. So it's kind of like that. The caterpillar and the butterfly makes a good metaphor for understanding our own evolution of consciousness, which I find basically is the evolution of trust. Trusting yourself. And that means you're okay if you trust yourself, no matter what happens. House burns down, I'm okay. I'll figure out what to do. Money goes out, I'm okay. I trust myself to figure out what to do. So it's basically a basic trust, that kind of like underlies the mistrust that we are conditioned to have. That's why we have insurance policies. That's a metaphor for not trusting. I got to have a backup. Or you got to back your computer up, you see. And nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that's kind of like a metaphor for not trusting. So it doesn't mean don't back up your computer or get insurance policy, but we're using things as metaphors to understand the invisible or the formless, which is our own mind, you see. So this trust is an interesting thing because we trust other people and then they disappoint us and then we're hurt. Marriage breaks up and all of that, you see. But that too is based on not trusting yourself. It doesn't mean you won't be hurt, but it means you're okay, even if the marriage breaks up or your best friend deserts you or whatever. You're okay. That's the basic trust I'm trying to communicate here. So my talks are basically, for me, experiments with trust. And even with writing, which is my art. Since I go, oh, this is another thing too. Today I was, there's Zuckerberg's on Congress, and they're putting him on the roaster and turning him over until he's done. You see, and so it's all about this data, And I got to thinking, well, basically I'm on social media, and I don't care if my data is being used because I got nothing to hide. What's my data? My miserable profile? I got nothing. I got nothing. So I'm here to expose myself. I'm here to share myself, you see. So I'm kind of like here as a transmitter. I use Facebook as a transmitter. Kind of like the movies of somebody who's on the last person on earth who's on an island and he's transmitting, is anybody there? Is anybody there? When somebody comes through the static, hello, I'm here. So I use Facebook kind of like as a transmitter, and it is a practice where I develop my trust in my writing to respond. So when I write very fast. I don't think about, what should be cute? What should be amusing? Oh, let me think of something. I don't do it that way. I write like that. So there's somebody says something, there's a comment, and then I say, oh, look what I wrote. So I write So the writing comes out of trust. And so anything you do, if you got a hobby or a craft or you cook or whatever you do that you do for no gaining idea, that you do because you just love to do it, you see, that's where you're developing trust. You trust your mistakes. You make a mistake, and when you have a foundation of trust, and the mistake works for you. So when you have this basis for trust, the world works for you. It's kind of like MacGyver. I love that story, that TV. Everything's a metaphor for me. I love MacGyver because no matter where he is, whatever's given, whatever he finds lying around, he knows, he trusts that he'll be able to use that the world will work with him. He trusts that the world will work with him and he can get out of a fix, you see. Now this trust is broken, I think, and I don't know, but I think, just look at a child and you have the child before and after Santa Claus. Santa Claus is kind of like a circumcision of trust. Before Santa Claus is disbelieved, the world is wonderful, wonderful. It's a big Christmas tree. Santa's there, and the world's going to give me stuff, and it's a friendly, happy place, you know. And then the child learns, Santa's dead. Oh no! And I remember asking my mother with tears, "Is Santa really dead?" And I don't know what kind of a blow that is. I mean, it's kind of like a welcome to the real world, kid. But it's the death of innocence. It's the death of trust. So innocence and trust is the same thing. Innocence and trust is the same thing, you see. So how do you restore innocence when you're in a fallen world? So that's kind of like what Christianity is saying. Basically, we're all fallen. You need Jesus to get, because he's innocent. So you need somebody who's innocent to build a bridge, a mediator between you and your source, and your lost innocence, you see. So this whole idea of innocence, and we can't get it because we're all fallen, and when that's believed in, you can't get it. When you believe that the world is not a trustworthy place, when you believe you've got to have a gun, when you believe that everybody's going to take something from you and you've got to get it first, when you believe you can't trust yourself, you got to depend on other people or your studies or your knowledge or the known, you got to depend on what we know. You got to depend on your education. You got to depend on the encyclopedias and the authorities. Who do you think you are? What authority? You know what I mean? That kind of like, who do you think you are? Jesus? That kind of thing. Who told you that? Where'd you get that from? What book did you read that in? You see, all of that stuff, you see, basically is coming from a loss of trust. We live in a world that has lost its trust. And so now we're forced to have insurance policies. And we're forced to live in fear, in an unfriendly world, like aliens, like we're put here from another planet. And we're in a foreign, strange world, you see. We don't quite feel at home because we don't trust it. But I'm here to tell you that this lost innocence, this lost trust, is not gone. It's already here. It's the basis of you. You are that, you see. But we've overlaid it with mistrust. So you have to do some practice. You have to do some meditation. You have to do some spiritual practices to restore, to find your lost trust, which is not lost at all. The universe is one. It's in balance. The universe is zero. It's not out of balance. So there's a basic trust there. When we're in balance, when everything is in balance, you trust everything. It's why we like to go home, because the home is in balance and we trust that everything will be where I left it. If anything's out, wait a minute, somebody moved something, you see. So anyway, that's my talk for today, is that who do you trust is the question. So you need to ask that to yourself. Who do you trust? Thanks for dropping in.